All right, welcome to another Deal Structure Sunday. As I always say, I want to mix it up a bit this week, and I want you to be able to see firsthand an interview I did with our high six 90-day certified coach, 90-day jumpstart certified coach, Rusty Ham. And the reason is a bunch of things. Number one, really cool messages that he has in the way in which he does it, because he's been a basketball coach for 23 years. So I want you to hear that, Ty. Also, there are many very important pieces about the types of deals we do, and I thought it'd be very appropriate for deal structure because he's done one of each one of our deals, the four game plans, as you'll hear us say, one of each. He also has gone through every level in our program. So for a lot of reasons, I think you're going to enjoy this, and I think you're going to get a lot of nuggets out of it, and I'd love to hear from you after it. So go ahead and email me back, Chris at Smart Real Estate Coach. Enjoy. All right, Rusty, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Oh man, I really appreciate you asking me back on. This is I'm super excited, especially coming up with our event coming up, and I'm super excited about this. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I said this in the intro. If I didn't, to Rusty's point, where you guys, the Wicked Smart listeners, are seeing this or hearing this post-event, but we're about to dive into one of our live events. It's gonna be pretty cool. Rusty, with that as a backdrop, just in case they didn't hear that yet, or for some reason hadn't seen you, they're new to the channel and new to everything. Just how long you been coaching, and what does coaching mean? Like, what did you do? And that'll give them some backdrop, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, first, again, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm Russell Ham. I was a high school basketball coach for 30 years. I taught physical education for 23 years. I joined the Wicked Smart community in 2019 as a 90-day jumpstart, and I went through kind of all the hoops as far as that. In 21, Chris and the team invited me to be a coach just for a couple students, and then in 22 they hired me on as a full-time coach, where now I'm coaching over 30 students on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and this is not like part of my flow here, but let me just say this for the audience. I said to my wife, Kim, this morning, who said she can't wait to see all you guys, the coaches, but I said, Rusty I was shaking my head. I said, Rusty just keeps like stacking it on and taking more on to be better. So congrats for that. That's just awesome.
No, I appreciate that.
While you're here, right?
Yep.
Okay, so as I said to you before we started, you've been helping, let's just say, your students, your players, like you brought the best out in them for 20-something years.
Right.
So you're still doing it, which is really cool. The court kind of changed, the players changed, and now you're doing that with sellers. And you and I know, but I want the audience to know, like, what with them, how are you helping them get through their pressure situation? And just for context, the audience should know that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just pressure situation for them. Sort of, what are the four game plans, Rusty, that we kind of have lined up for the sellers?
Yeah, great analogy, by the way. Again, I'm used to be a high school basketball coach, and we would have game plans all the time, right? We would have a practice plan, and then eventually towards the end we would go through different scenarios in a game. So when Chris asked me to join the community as far as a coach, now I'm coaching other students, but I'm also coaching sellers as well, right? And so the game plans that we primarily deal with in the terms business is one is a lease purchase. We can define that in a little bit if you want. Owner financing, when a house is typically free and clear. We also buy homes subject to their existing financing, so we can dive deep in a little bit of that. Typically, you're just taking over the payments of someone's mortgage on their behalf. There's different scenarios why would we do that. And then the last game plan is called an assign out, which is typically it's a lease purchase. We find a buyer, and then we just assign them. We wrap them in a nice little bow, like you like to say. Put them in a nice little bow, and then assign them back to the seller. So the seller becomes the landlord.
It's funny you say that. I had a call today with a student, and I said to the seller, he's a broker. I said, we put a nice little bow and we give it back. And he goes, I like that. I like you to put that in a bow. Like he was giving it back to me. It was funny. Anyway, let's do some definitions, Rusty. You and I know, and we were chuckling earlier because the Wicked Smart audience will go, what? Sometimes what are they talking about? So what does terms mean? It really means creative financing, right? in general.
Right. Yeah.
And then can you
Yeah.
help them with the first one you said lease purchase and I don't know, I will banter here a little bit, but why is that important to the seller too? Like, what does it mean and why is it important? And we'll kind of just bounce back and forth.
Yeah, a lease purchase simply is we're going to agree on a price. We're going to agree on a definitive end date with the seller, and that end date varies depending on the seller situation. We're going to take over all the responsibilities tied to that home, their insurance, taxes, mortgage, any repairs, maintenance. So we're going to take over all those responsibilities on the seller's behalf. And then on or before the date we decide on, we're simply just going to cash them out, right? So it's I mean, it's more of a delayed cash sale.
Yep.
And for sellers, it's important for these sellers it maximizes all the equity they have in that property, right? And these are sellers that don't necessarily need the money tomorrow. They have time, so they prefer full price, which we can talk about in a little bit. But they prefer a full price. They prefer to not give their money away to, realtor fees and transfer taxes and all that. They prefer to protect that equity that they have. They don't need the money right away, and then we just simply cash them out at a later date.
And you had a couple things I wrote down when you said that. I should know this answer, but you had at least one large lease purchase, didn't you? Or did you do all owner financing? Remind me.
I've done all four. Actually,
okay,
I've done a lease purchase and then an AO. I have two sub twos and an owner financing. So
let's talk about that. Sorry. So why did your seller do lease purchase? Let's kind of give that story because that'll give them some context. That's cool.
Yeah. So this one was during COVID. And I'm going to ask you a question later regarding COVID and all that, but this was during COVID. She's a doctor. She was hypersensitive about people coming through her home. So, I simply said, well, I can help you with that. I'm not going to be parading people through your home. We're going to do it by appointment only. And she had money, and that's primarily who I deal with in Southern California. There's a lot of people that have a lot of equity. So these are primarily the people that I deal with. They have a lot of equity. She wanted to downsize, and she had I think $400,000 in equity. She wanted that protected. She didn't want people parading through her home. She didn't want realtors showing her home. So I was able to help her with that.
Awesome. See, I can't tell you how many times I get asked, oh, so it's people who are in trouble. No, she wasn't in trouble. You solved an issue for her, right? Sweet. Great example of the lease purchase. I didn't know you had all, so this will be fun. So let's go to owner financing. You mentioned primarily free and clear, which of course is one of my favorite. So just again, for the audience, like what does it mean? Like who gets the check, who cuts the check? What does that all mean?
Yeah, owner financing, typically the owner is paid off. The mortgage is paid off. They still have, expenses, which is insurance and taxes. But simply, again, we're gonna agree on a price. We're gonna agree on length of term. Typically with owner financing, the longer we can go, the more we can help pay more. We can actually give them more if we can get a term that makes sense for both of us. And then they're in first position, which means they're just simply acting as the bank.
Exactly.
We're going to give them a monthly payment. And that again, owner financing, I tell my students all the time, owner financing is very nuanced, right? There's different things you can do. That's why they call it creative real estate. There's so many creative ways you can do owner financing that helps the seller get more money in the end. And then it also helps us, I guess, helps us as the investor as well.
You said two things. First, I think you made up a new word, which I love. So I wrote that down, nuancy. So I love that. So, but what made me think of when you said nuancy and you said, oh, it's all different scenarios. Is that not the same as you did for years on the court? Not like nonstop.
Oh yeah, that's a great analogy as far as coaching is I would equate a basketball game as far as creative real estate, because there's constant pivoting, there's constant you're calling timeout to make corrections. We pivot all the time in this field.
Yep.
So yeah, a great analogy. I didn't really think about that, but I appreciate that.
Well, you light up when it gets to the coaching. You're like, I got it. So that's what I thought of. And then you said pay more. I just want to go back because again, I'm thinking the listener going, what do you mean pay more? So if you could hit two things, Rusty. One is, what do you mean pay more? Why and how? And then secondly, earlier I was thinking of, so they're all thinking, okay, lease purchase and owner financing so far we've gone through, but you're taking on these payments and you're going to be negative right away. So if you could just pay more and then taking over payments for people or making payments to people, timing of that.
Yeah, I mean everything's contingent on finding the buyer.
There you go.
Typically, so we don't start making payments right away typically, unless it's a dire situation for the seller. But typically, we're going to go out and search for a buyer that can't walk into a bank today and get qualified. So we're going to put them in a situation where we give them time, right, in order to qualify. As far as yeah, it's not negative payments. We typically are not going to be in the negative right away. So
then the pay more piece.
yeah. So paying more. Well, just to back up a little bit, even in lease purchase, we're gonna pay them a fair market value without the commissions and fees, right? There's about 5 to 15%, which is you got your the commissions on both sides, three on the seller, so 3 on the buyer. You have transfer tax, you have multiple fees that are involved in a sale. So with both lease purchase and owner financing, we're saving them that much on the front end. And then, like I said, if we can go a longer term, we can pay them a little bit more. And that's because of principal pay down and other scenarios. But we can save them, and that's why the sellers we deal with, they don't need their money right away. They want to protect that equity, so we save them that 5 to 15% on the front end, and then we can pay them a little bit more on the back end, depending on the term.
So let's go to your owner finance. You had an owner financing because you said you had all 4. So on your owner financing deal, I'd like to know what did you solve for? What did you help them with their precious situation? Then we'll talk about the payments so that we tie back to, hey, how can we pay more? What was his or her scenario? Because I don't remember everybody's deals, obviously.
Right. So her scenario is she's an older lady. It was a house up in the mountains. And she's getting older. She couldn't climb stairs anymore. She tried to sell it at an X amount. She couldn't. I think at that time the market was kind of volatile.
Yeah.
And I talked to her in August of 21. And then she went through some health. She went through a health scare. Actually, she almost passed away.
Wow.
So what I did throughout the years is I just touched on her. I didn't talk about the house at all. I would just call her and say, hey, just checking in on you to see how your health is doing, how you're doing. And again, it wasn't house related. It was just, I wanted to see how her health was doing. And then in August of 22, she called me back. Hey, I'm ready to go.
Because you cared about her.
I cared about her. Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
What was the monthly payment to our principal only? How much?
So we scaled it a little bit. It was I did 2,500 principal only for 2 months, and then we bumped it up to what percent that she wanted for the remaining period, which was I think 4%.
So still pretty massive principal pay down because you had a nice low rate. Today's market, very low rate.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just for the Wicked Smart listener to know, Rusty just tied all that together because his first 2 months of 2,500 and 2,500 went to principal. So even if he overpaid by $5,000, he just ate that up in 2 months. That's sort of the caveat how we can get that done. I just circled helping Rusty one more time just to put a nail in this because you essentially did that your whole life. And then I don't know if you felt that's how and why you do that with people. I never asked you that. Like you just inherently did that. Like I'm just going to check her out and see if I can help her. Like that was just in your head.
Well, I mean, she almost died. And so I just naturally was just like, I just wanted to check in on her just to, I wasn't this investor just like, circling the wagons, just, see if I just was curiously, interested in her health and see how she was doing.
Yeah. Don't you find our niche, creative real estate in general, is sort of and that it allows you to be you because you get to help, you get to coach, you get to like all this stuff goes back to your 20 something years.
What I like about it is we're helping both sides, right? We're helping the seller, and then we're also helping buyers, which we don't need to really get into, but
No, but that's good. It's part of the game. It's part of the game plan. It makes the game plan successful. All right, let's talk about I don't necessarily need to spend too much time on the AO. We'll define it for everybody, but let's talk about the sub two.
Yeah.
Let's define it first, and then because there is a lot of misunderstandings. Let's say that.
So there's a couple different, like, so for me, it was different. Typically, in a subject to the existing, some people, they may be behind on payments, or the value of the house is the same as their mortgage. So we're going to buy that house. We're going to help them get rid of the house because of financial situations that they're in, and we're going to take over their mortgage subject to the existing loan. The title is going to transfer into our company's name. Mortgage is going to stay in the seller's name. We're just going to service that loan forever, right? I think so. In my situation,
service, that's exactly what we're doing because you don't have them personally.
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So in my situation, again, primary sellers that I speak with have a lot of equity. This gentleman had, I wrote it down. He had 318,000 in equity. He just bought a home just down the street. His new home mortgage was $6,000. His current the house I was trying to buy was at $4,000 a month. So he was out each month $10,000 a month. So I came in and said, hey, here's what I can do. I can take over those payments and relieve you of that $4,000, and I can protect that $304,000 that you have, and then I can pay you. I can create a note and give that to you at a later date. And he was fine with it. He wanted to stop the bleeding immediately. So we closed on.
Talk about creative. I mean, that's super creative.
Right.
So that actually, just for the listener, that actually you combine two techniques, which is not uncommon. Sub two, subject to the existing financing staying in place, and owner financing, essentially.
Right.
The owner financing, if you said it, I want to make sure I go back and never mind the listener. The second piece, the equity, is a big chunk. No payments or interest on that yet?
Nope.
Right.
4 years. Yep. On or before the 4th year. So.
Free money for 4 years.
Yep.
That's pretty cheap. Free money. All right. Rusty, let's define the AO, just because literally today I was on a phone with a seller for a student and he was a broker. So I said, this technique is more for you. And he appreciated it because, again, I just giving him what I thought was best for him. And I literally said to him, it's not the best for us financially, but it's best for you. So just define it for everyone so they understand when you said AO.
AO is simple. You're going the original contract with the seller is a lease purchase contract. You're going to agree on a price. You're going to agree on a monthly payment. Typically, that's going to be their PITI, right? You're going to go out and find a buyer. Again, I described it earlier. Someone who's not financeable today. They just need time, right? So, in my particular, the wife, they had the money, but she was in a bankruptcy. So she was in her 5th year of a 7-year bankruptcy. So she had 2 years to go with her bankruptcy. Perfect scenario. They had the money for $1 million home. They just needed time. She needed 2 more years. So I said, hey, perfect opportunity. The seller was used to renting his home out. And I said, okay, here's what I can do. I can find a buyer, and then I can wrap them up in a nice little bow and assign them to you. You become the landlord. And it worked out perfectly for them. He actually ended up seller financing them. They didn't necessarily go to a bank later on, but it totally worked out.
So AO, assign out, and again, I keep going back to your experience. Each one of your scenarios, you took a pressure cooker situation, right, and fixed it, which has to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I appreciate and I thank you for these questions, because these are techniques that you've taught me over time. We're not the right fit for everybody, right? We're not. This is not a cookie cutter real investor. We are solving issues. We're solving problems with sellers and buyers.
Mm.
And that's what I loved about what you guys brought to the table. And that's what attracted me to you. Yeah, so you touched on something as far as pulling back. Hey, we're not the right fit for it. There was a call that I listened to that you did where you pulled back. Can you? Yeah, it was an owner financing situation where you guys offered him, a certain amount with principal, and he didn't like the price and he wanted interest, and you pulled back and you said, hey, take it to market. And so I don't know if you can.
I remember it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was for a student, actually. It's for Renee. So, okay, well, it goes back to what you and I said. I listened to what he said, and what he said was, I don't know, I might be interested later, but I want to get ideally full price, or I want to get a price, I want to get a cash. So I said, go try it. I think I told him 30 to 60 days, and then bring it to me. If you can't get it done, I'm your plan B. I think I said something like that, if I recall.
Is this but you pulling back kind of, it's what I've been trying to tell the students is, they're so eager to, try to get these deals. It's like, we're here to solve problems. We're not, yes, we want to get these deals under contract and, help you change your life. But in the end, we're here to help. And he wasn't ready for the help yet. Right.
Right.
And you go back and you said, hey, the market's going to tell us what's going to happen. If you're not going to sell it, then, we're still here for you. We're gonna be out regardless.
No, that's cool. Cool. You made me remember that. So I forget stuff now, but it was also cool that you brought that back to back to reality. Rusty, I do have sort of a wrap up topic / thought we can banter a little bit on scenario. Before I do that, you knew you were coming on here. So when you were sleeping last night and woke up this morning, did you have like a question or two or a nugget or two that I didn't hit you on yet before I kind of move into my wrap up thoughts? Because I want you to be able to share that if you do. We didn't nail it.
Yeah. So you've been through many cycles, right? You've touched upon it in your book, the '08 crash, the debacle, you like to say. So you've been through all these cycles. Can you describe the pandemic one, how you kind of presented it to the community and how we thrived? I mean, I think you're gonna touch upon it, but good investors go through these cycles, and how they react to it really determines how successful they are. So can you kind of touch upon that?
Yeah, no, cool. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, well, that's appropriate. Because right now, as of you and I talking, we had Fed rates go up yesterday afternoon, and now you have more people screaming in the press, right? And that makes more uncertainty to the sellers. So what happened during March of 2020? People screaming, sellers chaotic. They needed a guide. So I remember, like it was yesterday, it was 3 years ago now, screaming on the mastermind call with you guys saying, this is the time not to run, but to double down. And I said, I didn't say go ignore it. I said, be aware of what's going on, but be laser focused on helping sellers because they need you right now. And our volume in the community, you and others, went up 3 times in March and April, 3 times. Because that was before the market got hot and the sellers were stuck in this vortex going, what do I do for about 60 days? And we did a bunch of deals. So that's what happened. But to your question, now it's exactly the same, in my opinion. And people go, oh, it's like 08, we're going to have a crash. No, 08, there wasn't inflation. In 08, there wasn't a lot of things that are present now. This is the best time, other than that little window of COVID, in my 32 years to be in creative real estate, by far. So I can't wait for the event next week. So that's cool, Ty. Did that answer it, or did I?
Yeah, no, I just remember you kind of described 3 different, scenarios. You got you flight, or you
Fight or flight.
And then some would freeze, right? You kind of described the third one, which is, people froze. We didn't freeze. You said double down. That's kind of why, that's all you said was, hey, double down, keep hammering the phones and trying to help these people because people are freezing. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I forgot those 3, but so you just gave me some content for next week. This is good. All right, here's as I wrap up, kind of how I thought we'd wrap this up, Rusty, because this is again the ties here, the time we've spent together, you and I, to understand all these ties to coaching is really cool. So let's do this. I'll paint a picture that we may not have talked about directly, but I know it's in your wheelhouse. Your team wins the state championship this year.
Right.
Most of your talent is seniors, and they all leave. So
Right.
next year, you get them, you get all these young kids. It's all young kids in my eye. I call everybody kid, but you get all these young kids back in the court. What do you say to them to kind of ease their, obviously, pressure, because we said it before, but their uncertainty, their fear, all that? Because I imagine it's the same exact thing. You're dealing with sellers who, for the first time, are hearing about creative real estate. So I'm just curious, because it's probably a similar answer, right?
Yeah. So you have a new group coming in. They've won the championship. You know, a lot of people are going to compare, right? They're going to compare this new group to that, which is unfair because it's a different group. They've been through the program for 4 years. You know, you have a new group coming in. So we get to the fundamentals. We really focus on the fundamentals of what we're trying to do. And when you get to the fundamentals and you get everything kind of sound, I mean, you're never going to be sound, you know, 100%, but because you're always going to revert back to fundamentals. But once you get to that, then you can start game planning, you can start pivoting. And then that's what I do with the sellers. And that's what I do with my students as well. But especially with sellers is, you know, oh, the interest rates are up. I don't want to sell now because I have this low interest rate here. But if I sell, you know, so there, you know, the sky is falling type of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just rent it, or, you know, so I just go back to the fundamentals and just really talk about, you know, this is what we're going to do for you. And this is how we're going to help. Right.
I wrote that down and underlined it twice, fundamentals, because I didn't know what you're going to say, obviously, but same with the kids as with the sellers, right? Just basic, or you'll blow them away.
Yeah, and you want to keep it as simple as possible to sellers because, you know, at times they, you know, because they're so ingrained in the traditional sense as far as real estate.
Yeah.
They're not familiar with creative, right? So you need to kind of break it down for them and just be super simple. And I tell the students this all the time, you know, don't over explain it on the first call, right? Just get the information, just ask them if they're open to the idea, and then you can dive deeper on future calls or even on an appointment. But we really kind of need to pull it back in a sense.
I love it. I'm going to add this one. I told you that was my wrap up, but okay. So you're dealing with a lot of students right now. You said, was it 30-ish?
30 plus, yeah.
Okay. And you tend to get the ones that come in and they go through what we call our 90-day onboarding process, whether they're staying there or graduating, so to speak, into a different level. Why do they, I'd love the listeners to know this. Why do they tend to like over explain? Why do you think, like, there's no wrong answer? Why do you think they tend to over explain and give, like, I used to call it a seminar? Why do they do that?
Because they think they're going to get a deal on the first call. They think that if they explain what we do on the first call, that the seller is going to say, yes, I want to do that, which is never the case. Yeah, so go ahead.
So would that be equivalent? I'm trying to find the basketball, and you know I never played, but I love the analogy of sports. So would that be equivalent to you taking that new team and, like, instead of the fundamentals going, like, you're talking about the end of the year, like final game, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I haven't, you know, let's say we had a good freshman team or a good JV team, and they came onto the varsity. It would be like me, very first practice, me drawing up plays and having them go through different scenarios on the first day. That would be the worst thing you can do because it's gonna confuse the heck out of them. That's why I always revert back to, we're gonna work on, you know, catching the ball properly. We're gonna pivot. We're gonna, you know, make a correct pass, and then, you know, gradually we're gonna, you know, get into the different scenarios or game plans, like we like to call it.
Such a cool analogy. You know, all your students need to hear that answer at the very end of this interview. I'll make sure they do. Or at the event, maybe you can talk about it. Rusty, before we end, your head's covering it. What's the quote behind you?
Good players inspire themselves. Great players inspire others.
Really cool. Briefly, why is that? Like, it's on your wall, so it means something to you.
Yeah, so it's my wife got it for me, and it's basketball related, but it can be related to life. But I'm for basketball, I've always, for 30 years, I always have kids that come through and they think they're so good, and they're, they're behind the back and to the legs, and it's always about them, right? But the ones that shine the most are the great players, are the ones that are always looking to help others, get the others involved. Yes, they're going to get their points, they're going to get theirs, but they are also looking out for the betterment of the team, and so that's what attracted me with you guys is we're always looking to reach out, right? We talk about being in the trenches with them. We are literally in the trenches with them, helping them with anything that they come across their table. We're always there to help, and that's what attracted me to you guys. So
Love it.
that's what it's about.
I think that's an awesome way to wrap. And I didn't know I was going to read your quote, but it worked great. Awesome. And obviously I meant that literally. I want all your students to hear this because I think it was just amazing, the ties, and you're just going to continue to raise people up. So thanks, buddy. I really appreciate you being on.
No, and again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of tell my story and hopefully, transform, these the people that are coming through our community, transform them into successful real estate investors.
So what we're doing, travel safe, and I will see you next week at the event.
All right. Thank you.